you, all of you, for coming. I know it's not my Write Our World is not nearly as well known as Peace Jam, for example, so it's a bit of a question mark, probably what you're getting yourselves in for. But I woke up this morning with a smile on my face because I was so excited to be able to share this project that has been my little baby that I've been fostering along for the last year and a half with some people that actually might use it in their classrooms, and just to be able to kind of pick your brains about what sort of resources do you want in your classroom, what would it look like, what kind of resources do you have to for this kind of thing, how would you use it? So I just thought we could start with some introductions. So my name is Julie Carey, and I'm actually a Denver native, an alumni of the DPS. Went to Montclair and Smiley and Manual many years ago. And then I taught in the DPS for a while as well. I taught at Cole Arts and Science Academy. And ESL is my primary background in teaching. But I also have a background in other types of education. I worked for Outward Bound for 13 years. I ran travel abroad programming for high school. Hi, welcome. And so, and a lot of service learning stuff. So my background is a little bit broader than just classroom teaching. And most recently,
speakers, Julie, are you good?
I think they should be all plugged in.
Are you using them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, just for those of you who just came in, we're just doing a quick intro. So yeah, something that was really significant that happened in my life, I went to teach abroad in Jakarta, Indonesia for 2 years at an international school there. So it was an IB school, and it was also an Apple Regional Training Center. And so I was coming from the DPS, and I'm like, huh? Yeah, I had no idea what all that was, and it was really a pretty mind-blowing experience on every level. You know, on a personal experience, just packing up my life, putting it in a storage unit, bringing 3 suitcases, flying out to Jakarta, meeting new people, new country, new language, new everything, and new school for sure. And all these teachers I was teaching with were just whizzes at integrating technology. And it wasn't a 98% free and reduced school like I'd been in. It was a school for wealthy Indonesian kids and kids whose parents were working in Indonesia. So they came from Korea and Taiwan and Europe, some from the US, some from Africa, but they were there working. And so they were expat kids. And there were so many languages floating around. All the kids were required to learn. School was taught in English, and so I was an ESL teacher supporting the kids in developing that language. But they had to learn Indonesian and they had to learn Chinese. And they already spoke Korean or whatever else they spoke. So there were a million languages floating around, and I learned about technology, and I learned specifically about just the value of using ebook authoring in school. So if I could, let's just start and do a quick intro, who you are and what brings you here to this session. Maybe, yeah. So any volunteers, just so we find out who we all are. Thank you.
My name's DJ Barks. I teach 3rd grade at Garden Place Academy. I think what brought me to this session is just looking for, we use a ton of technology in my room, and so looking for ways to just keep it, just especially in writing, more interactive piece of that. So.
Okay. Have you done any ebook offering yet?
Mm-hmm.
I'm Jessie. I'm at Ashley. We're the only one doing iPad school right now in DPS. And then I'm on a school design team where we'd like to flip the learning. And so I'm here to just learn a little bit more about authoring ebooks.
I worked with Zach.
Yes.
Yeah,
Love
so
him. He's, yeah. Amazing.
I'm Amanda Mitchell. I teach 3rd grade here at DCIS. And we're about to have one-to-one in 3rd through 5th. So I'm really excited to learn about how to get my kids writing ebooks.
One-to-one iPad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My name is Elaine. I teach 3-year-olds, so but I really am into literacy, and I do the EL for the school.
Oh, great.
I'm Janet Fernandez. I'm at Kaiser, and I believe in technology is the way to go, and I just want to find out more how to integrate it into my classroom.
What grade do you teach?
Third grade.
Third grade. Interesting. This is a workshop for third grade teachers. I'm just kidding.
Come and put in a minute.
I'm about to break that mold.
Oh, good, okay.
Dr. Yvonne Henderson, I teach middle school and high school at Vista Academy, and I am a language arts teacher and I teach ELD. So I'm interested in using ebooks and doing, I did it in Illinois, but creating them is something different. Right? Take it to another level.
Natalie Carl. I'm actually from Fort Collins. I teach third grade at Coyote Ridge.
Third grade?
Yeah. It's an IB school, so I'm with you. I was shocked with that one too. Yeah, I don't know really anything about ebooks. I don't really use them, and I'd like to. So.
All right, great. Well, thanks again for joining. So this is in order to get this organization going, we had a crowdfunding campaign. So that, I'm not a millennial here, you can tell that. And this was a brand new deal for me to do crowdfunding campaign. So we set it up with Indiegogo, and we had a launch party at the Posner Center, which is like an international studies co-working space. So, not international studies, international development co-working space. So anyway, so this is our PowerPoint from the launch presentation. We had a big launch party. So this just sort of walks through my journey in coming up with this concept and building it so far. So that's the school where I taught in Jakarta. And I was lucky enough to be part of I've already told you a little bit about this. This particular photo, though, was taken during a collaborative ebook project that we did. The boy in the red shirt went to our school. The boy in the left shirt, in the yellow shirt, is a student at a school for the deaf in Jakarta. So he speaks Indonesian Sign, which is not American Sign, and Indonesian. The boy in the red shirt, being a student at our school, speaks Indonesian because he's learning Indonesian, but that kid is Thai, and he also speaks English. So they together, the deaf kids, wrote stories in Indonesian and did illustrations. And then our kids worked with them to translate them to English and film them speaking it in sign. So these books had original illustrations, and they were told in Indonesian and English and sign. So I was just like, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing ever, because it's not just a book. You can import video, you can import sound, text. I'll show you more about that. But this was kind of the beginning of my love affair with this concept. And then Jane Ross was a fourth grade teacher that I worked with. I was an ESL teacher, and I just did a lot of inclusion. It was amazing. It wasn't like to pull out for 45 minutes. It was a lot of inclusive stuff. So I worked really closely with her in her classroom. She's an Australian who's married to an Indonesian. His family still lives in a village in Sumatra. She brought their kids and some iPads to visit their relatives and work with the local kids to make bilingual ebooks in Batak, which is the native language. It's one of 300 indigenous languages in Indonesia, in Batak and English. And the photos in these books, they tell the story of like riding a water buffalo, or a trip to the market, or a game that the boys play in the sand. And so documenting what the real life is in that village, but then building the literacy skills to be telling it through text and through oral recordings. And so as a language teacher, I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest, because it's all 4 language domains. So another bit about my history is I have done a whole lot of travel in my life. And in 1995, I went to Guatemala. And this is actually a photo from 1995. I found a language program that was in a faraway little tiny village, and it was an indigenous village. And it was a really profound experience for me. As you can tell, there was no electricity in the house. There was just a candle. There was no plumbing, none of that in 95. I came back 10 years later, and I met this girl here, was then 16 years old, and she was like, I really want to go to college. And so I helped set up a scholarship to high school. I set up a scholarship fund for her to become trained as a teacher. And then a year later, I was working for an educational travel company. And so I brought kids down to spend time in that community. And then, so I've had this lasting relationship with that community and then a couple of others that I visited over the years. And so I've become a total tech head lately, right? So I'm looking on Facebook and I'm like, I wonder who's out there. Like, they're on Facebook. You know? And so I'm like, whoa, this is too weird. And that just made me realize, my God, everyone's on technology now. Like, it finally has reached the point, at least in my life experience, that like everyone's on board, or you know, or the vast majority, and give it 10 more years. And it's so then I got thinking, okay, what a connector it can be. So I don't know if you've heard of Startup Weekends, but I did, and I went, and I presented this concept, and these 3 lovely women joined me, and we spent the weekend workshopping this concept of Write Our World, and what would it really look like. And you know, this is like brand new territory for me, but it was really empowering because everybody was really excited about it, and they were like, you've got to do it. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to get paid for it, so I'll do it anyway. And then another really pivotal thing for me is I took this class, and she wrote this book, and if you've never read it, I fully recommend it. So she's an Australian educator who taught also in international schools, and she teaches a class called the Flat Connections Global Educator course, and it was like a 12-week online course, and it taught all about how do you create collaborations globally between kids through online tools. And I mean, it just opened up so many doors for me about, you don't have to teach what's in your classroom. Like, there's this computer that can be a portal to the world, and all of a sudden, you know, in some ways I'd like lost my passion for education with all of the constraints and stuff that American schools have. But learning about this, I'm like, my passion for multicultural education just found a new doorway. And how exciting to think about connecting people, just like Facebook is connecting me with this family who lived with a candle 20 years ago. So, so my good friend Jonathan Stalls connected me with Carrie Edson, who's my partner in crime, and she's going to show up when she can. And Carrie said, I want to do it too. So we went and did a pilot project on the Navajo reservation last winter. And they had iPads at their school, but they'd only had used them for testing. Just lovely, right? So, so anyway, we went there and we helped these kids make some ebooks about their culture in Navajo and English. And the Navajo teachers there, their Navajo is pretty sketchy because they live on the edge of the reservation. And the teachers were so thrilled because they were like, they're using Navajo for something authentic because they're so excited about this project because it was just a way that they could be using their voice, being creative, having ownership, and then actually knowing there's going to be an authentic audience for it. So that was really, really cool. And then Carrie comes from a background where she's worked with the refugee population in Aurora quite a bit. So we also worked with some refugee kids at Crawford School, which is up on East Colfax. And they also were very excited. They were a little bit younger, but the opportunity of recording themselves speaking their native language, talking to their parents about how do I actually write that in Amharic, you know, for example, also gave us the support we needed to continue on. So this is a video that tells our story as well. No! Who knows the, You know what though, I have it here. I have it on iMovie. Thank you, let me just try, I think I've got it right here. Let's see. You're like waiting out there for the moment.
Yeah, I was. Meant to be helpful.
Here it is. Sorry, here, it's on this one too. There we go.
It's been estimated that of the 7,000 languages in the world, half of them are endangered and may disappear in this century. Some people see technology as a threat to the existence of small languages, but the really savvy small language communities are using technology to sustain themselves, to expand their reach.
We want the other kids to know how our culture is, and we want to know how their culture is.
We're building an online library of ebooks written by kids for kids.
I love ebooks because they can be created bilingually with text and audio. You can also add photos and videos.
My name is Nick Sullivan.
As I've been observing how ebooks works, I see a lot of great benefits as far as helping the students personalize or take ownership of both the culture and language, and then incorporating technology into the classroom. It's a great benefit. It's what we really would like to see more of. Also, it challenges them. If they're going to write about themselves, it challenges them to know who they are and maybe research a little bit about their culture.
I was talking in Navajo, and then I stepped out a little bit to help this other kid, and then in Navajo he says "Hakwa," and I was like, wow, and just translating and speaking Navajo in front of him, and then he actually he goes like this, and he goes "Hakwa," and I was like, wow, is this thing actually helping, you know?
You may want to know more about other cultures, but you've never heard of them. So this is one way you can find out.
As a teacher librarian, I believe these books would be a great addition to our library. We know that students get lots of value from reading in their mother tongue as well as in their new language, so having these books available for them would be a great opportunity for students to explore books of their culture.
We envision an online literary space where young people from all over the world can come together to share their stories. We believe this will foster multilingualism and global citizenship while empowering youth to keep their languages and cultures alive. Your valuable insights will help bring the social profit to life.
Okay. So you probably, what's a social profit? Well, I just did a really exciting workshop on fundraising, because fundraising is it's a brand new thing for me. And so the woman that led it, said it's not non-profit, because that means you're sort of on the side, you don't really matter. It's social profit, that you're kind of in the center and you're dealing with social things. So anyway, that's the story with social profit. Let's see. Is it Carrie? Hi, this is Carrie that I told you all about.
Hi, I'm so sorry to show up late. I was teaching a class this morning, so I'm glad I could be here.
So we've just gone through the presentation, we've just shown the video. So the last step here is, since that video was made and the presentation, so I spent the summer, I spent a month in Guatemala last summer, and I went back to some of the communities where I'd been 20 years ago and made some ebooks with kids. And then also Carrie has worked for an organization called US Brazil Connect, and so we tried a service learning model where some American community college students came and worked with local Brazilian kids to teach English. And so they made books in English and Portuguese because it was a language learning tool, you know, for them. But just to give you a sense of what the experience in Guatemala was like, I just have a short little video. It's only a couple minutes. Anyway, I was just thinking, God, I want to try to bring that experience alive for them a little bit. This is only a tiny tidbit, but they're master collaborators, this culture. I mean, my God, they're like, you see, they're so natural working together, and they were absolutely taken with this project. came in on a Saturday and they worked in teams of 3 making ebooks. One of them did corn, weaving, traditional dress, marimba, and the marketplace. And they took an iPad and they ran around town and took photos of everything and videos, and then they assembled this book and they wrote it in Spanish and Mam, which is their native language, and recorded. And I mean, they couldn't have been, it was like I had to tear these things away from them. They were so into it. So what we'd like to do, as that video said, is we'd love to take this opportunity to pick your brains about how would it look ideally for you in your classrooms? Like, is this concept interesting, and if so, how? Because I think everybody comes from there's a lot of 3rd grade teachers in here, like the vast majority. But I think there's probably an overlap about the types of things that we're all sort of looking for in our classrooms. And there's also a lot of differences in your settings and your given situations and all that. So what we thought would be hopefully beneficial for both of us is to give you an opportunity to kind of brainstorm in small groups. What would global literacy look like ideally in your classroom? What does that involve? And so we were going to give you guys a large paper and a little bit of time, and maybe a group of 3 and a group of 4, and just do some talking and create some sort of a visual of what does that look like for you, global literacy. Has anyone heard the term biliteracy? A little bit, right? We use bilingualism a lot, but then biliteracy is really, you have all those literacy skills in more than one language, not just speaking. But then I like to think of global literacy also as incorporating geography and cultural awareness, and it's a much broader thing, but it's also a literacy, because some people are globally literate and some people aren't, and the vast majority of people in this country, I think it's safe to say, are not. And so I think that it's becoming more and more being emphasized a lot more at a lot of levels in our country, and 21st century skills and all that, to bring global literacy into the classroom. So what would it look like for you? So we have a table with 2, or a table with 5. So I'd encourage you guys, would you rather work in pairs, or would you, I think maybe 3 or 4 might lean, like, have more dialogue. More, not dialogue, but like polylog, or I don't know. So let's have a group here and a group here. And yeah, we'll do a page.
Yeah, so of course, we're all feeling the you've been to my first. No.
And we'll take maybe
remember my daughters, Angelique and Normandy.
say about 10 or maybe 15 minutes for this. The other thing I wanted to show you, in each group, I'll give a couple of iPads, and some of our books are on these iPads. So then you can have the experience of looking at them, and maybe that'll help you think, oh wow, how could I actually use this in my classroom?
Global literacy. Like how we do
Native American.
Do it by.
You said Navajo. Do you have other ones?
Yeah. Yes, but so we should hope to.
There's no. I have place at foster
We want to do third grade.
Everybody. And I'm not in 3rd grade.
Well, I think there's 4 3rd grade teachers and 3 non.
Yeah. Open cards too. Yep.
It's okay. We'll get a do a lot for the school.
I'm really hoping to get involved.
Oh, we got markers? Okay. Should I do this first?
Yeah.
To preserve one.
And that's what they're doing.
This one doesn't have any on my books. It probably doesn't have a creator, but
Oh,
I can put it in there. You want to get them online?
No.
Yeah, I was so stubborn. Okay, great. And I think that'll be easier than just sometimes that sound gets a little wonky and creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, even just to start just in my classroom, because I'm in the English classroom, but I have a lot of Spanish-speaking students. And we are trying to build the capacity at our school because we are bilingual, but no one really knows that. Like we need to bridge that gap somehow. And like even in my classroom, you know, as a lead indicator, cultural responsiveness is a key component in more than just me speaking the generic phrases with them in their home language, letting the kids hear that with each other. So even just starting literally in my classroom, creating us books, you know, where one of them's doing English and one of them's translating Spanish and it's got nice audio. And then how do I build from that? And I thought they could share these books through Edmodo and that possibly there could be a classroom, you know, in Spain, you know, and then we can put comparing and contrasting your formal standard Spanish versus the true Spanish formal standard, you know, and just doing all that ahead of stuff. To get to that global piece, to like sharing. I do have, my cousin teaches in Brazil, and I thought, well, I could maybe bridge a gap there. Because he teaches adults, but they're still constantly as adults learning English as if they were a kindergarten or first grader. And maybe even sharing out that way. We're like, they're doing maybe Portugal and English, and we're doing Spanish and English, and we're sharing. So my kids are now learning a little bit of Portuguese, their kids are using a little bit of our Spanish. I downloaded the there's something. So this was World, what was it?
WriteourWorld.
Mine will also do as I mentioned, but there's some yes. What's the one word in it?
So no, that's something, I mean, you have to go through that. For example, if I made one with my nephew.
Somehow tying my leaders into like policies and reformation for me personally. So it's like equity in education and reformation. Those are like pillars of my students. I'm trying to teach them, like as first graders, like your voice matters. But if you don't do something with it, don't do it. What is this particular class and this tribe struggling with? How do I compare to that? How can we really solve this problem together, even though we're
Right now, they're all free of charge.
there's an ownership there. I think it's just living with my students. It's just my teacher's telling me to do this in independent practice because she's busy in small group. You know, and that's the reality. Right now, don't bother her right now. She's in small group. Just I'm on my iPad. I'm doing an app right now. 10 minutes. It's gonna buzz. I'm gonna go to the next one. Really having
small group time.
yes, in small group independent practice. You guys are now really doing something that matters. And it isn't just this sense of I'm just staying busy. I'm just staying busy and quiet. And I'm staying busy for a purpose. I don't know. I feel like it's the direction schools need to go. Bridge the gap and make it meaningful. This could possibly like really do that.
I appreciate this because this was a really key learning for me.
Well, I have 3-year-olds, so I need the parents
help. Yeah.
And I do think as we're as our Western civilization is melting together, people are losing their identity in that sense that it's okay to have pride in your culture, and it doesn't mean that you're privilege. So we have to, we have to perpetuate ourselves and that have value in it. But then now it needs to be about collaboration and connection, because that human connection is the problem. If we don't have that.
Right. Well, with this, I don't have, I'm fluent in Spanish, but all my kids are from other languages, so. I'm Spanish, none of them. So I have to rely on the parents to give me words and stuff in their language, and so having this would be awesome. They could go, you know, to the library and have a book in their own language.
Well, that's the thing, it's amazing. So I was with this community in Guatemala and I met a couple of social justice lawyers that were there.
It's just about where they're from.
Because the people that they worked with in Oakland, California had all moved up there from that community. And so they all were mom speakers, this indigenous language, but there's no reading material in moms. And so there's no, that's the real deficit in like the way the internet is used and stuff, is it's not accessible if you don't speak a dominant language. And so it just contributes to the dying off of the small languages and stuff. So it's really
And another thing is like having the fairy tales from their country, you know, translated into English.
Yeah.
You know, I really love that.
Yeah, and it's, you know, your age group can do even you can make an ebook with a 3-year-old. It's gotta help them, but I mean, this application that we use is very simple. But it could be an ABC book kind of thing, you know, with a picture of something and the name of it and which languages or.
And their ego is so
they want to try.
They want to try and show and it's like.
And then like just to get, because I'm also on the ECET2, the parent connection and you know, get them involved in our school and stuff.
What app is used for it?
Education is really good too. The notability on here, show what to do with right now.
So you can touch the icons for sound.
Yeah, so I clicked.
Yeah, and just a different way to kind of show how you can.
Lessons I could have just created that one page, that one moment.
Okay,
Terminology, lessons, like talking about citing evidence in a text, finding keywords. Now, I know if this word in a different language, okay, well, that kind of things. As a first grader, tracking that third word. What was the third word? Now, what is it in English? Oh, you know, so it's like, and for teachers to do the
how they process,
you know, body.
how they understand.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And they think to be able to retell.
Or language development.
Yeah, very simple photos, you can kid themselves with the, or even like, when they become published authors, and anyone who's helping them. And then our concept is that you can write the author, you know, there'll be a collaborative learning space where kids can contact each other and provide feedback or questions on what they've done.
What app is used for this?
It's called Book Creator.
Okay, perfect, there we have that, so definitely,
My pastor last
we wanna try that in yours are great.
Really?
In it.
My kids would be so much more into writing this way. I think just in general.
Oh, yeah, and I'm like, wow.
Because I'm just thinking like, as a first step, maybe we do this with like, we're studying biography, like we're going into our biography unit, and each of our kids are creating their own biography of someone who's made a difference in the world. And so,
And the,
book creator.
Self-managed.
yeah.
You know, actually, where they have a little picture of like,
So,
solve for what?
the constraints that we are thinking,
Where is X?
is that the books are all need to be bilingual, so even if they're a native English speaker, then they're challenged to be translating it into a second language. just to sort of keep that culture going in this library. And then we're also thinking we'll keep it related to culture in some way. But I don't know, because as you're talking about the hands and the body parts and all that, so all of that's useful stuff too. So I'd be curious to know what your thinking is on that too, and kind of.
Different languages that can be represented in that one concept.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, but the content of the book then wouldn't be specifically culture, would it? It'd be just the body. And I actually see value to that too. I see a lot of value to having simple books like that in this type of library.
Because in a way, it's still, in ways, it's still promoting culture. How different cultures look at or refer to the body. I mean, it still has aspects of that.
Right.
Plus, you get the pictures of different kids from different nations represented in the classroom.
True.
Maybe the hands would be from one, and the eyes from another, kid. So all cultures are home.
You said book creator, right?
That's right. And they're actually working with us on this. I've been kind of crazy about this project. So I contacted them on Twitter and got in touch with them, and I'm like, what do you think, you guys? And so they're like, we write stuff about what you're doing for our blog. We have this amazing blog of what all these teachers are doing with their app. And it's pretty cool. It's like it needs the internet, but it shouldn't.
I know mine just did that and I reset the.
It did that to me, and it said it brought it back to PDF, and I had to retell it to look at books.
I just restarted that one.
There we go. So I was showing them, we have a few different things here. This one's from Brazil. These are all from Guatemala, the different areas of Guatemala. And this one's with the refugee youth that I worked with from Macondo, and he's sharing his story. He drew all the pictures for this one, so it's a little bit different than taking. He's an artist who's going to school now for animation.
So how would we, if we were interested in wanting to do this with our classroom, how do we connect with you guys, with other classrooms? Like a portal or something that we can submit books to, or how does that all work?
Yeah, so we have WriteourWorld.org is our website. We have cards we can hand out to you, all for connecting with us. At some point in the future, we'd like to do some trainings for teachers on how to use the online library and also how to create the books as well, and kind of what we're looking for as an organization and what we're sharing. Obviously with others as well, and then Julie and I have a lot of connections with different communities here locally and around the world as well, that we'd love to help connect teachers with. So there's a lot of options, but WriteourWorld.org, and then we both have email address there and our phone numbers on there.
Okay. So there's not necessarily a spot yet where all of these books are from around the world.
They're on our website.
Oh, they are on the website.
And they're under our books.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can check them out.
Will you be ever going towards an app for Write Our World where it has it all?
So we have an app. We work with the creator to create the books, and that's the app that they use to create the books. But in terms of downloading and reading the books, that's something you can access on our library, on our website.
Okay.
Yeah. What about sharing back? So let's say in my first grade classroom, we're doing a book creator or something Ashley's using, but we've never put a spin on it for like the bilingual part. Can we share back with you guys? Like someone reviews it and says, you know, that's actually a masterful book. We're gonna add that to this our webpage. Yeah. There's an ability to kind of share with you guys.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And right now, the way that people are doing it, we just have Dropbox and email. People are sending us EPUB files, and we can put them on there.
So let's do maybe another minute in small groups and just kind of finish up your visual. Okay, yeah. I just assumed that it would. Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, so in the next 10 minutes or so, all right, so let's come back together. So it really was so much fun to hear you guys talk and just generating ideas from each other about how this kind of a resource might be useful for you. I'd love to just take a few minutes and have each group share with the other. So yeah, just generating more ideas. Is there a group that would like to start?
We can. So we just said it kind of what helped motivate kids in writing, incorporates their own culture. Thank you. For visual learners especially, creates ownership of learning and their culture. We thought you could also have them like retell a story from the perspective of a character or perspective of an object maybe in that book or the setting, and or their perspective of what is home. So just some different options to incorporate that in your classroom.
So this is a third grade classroom,
Yeah.
probably, right? Okay.
I think so. You could do.
Since I missed introductions, we're all teaching which grade?
Yeah, different, so
All
first,
different,
3 year
okay.
third.
I see. All right.
So for me, I wanted to kind of think about just starting in my own classroom, bridging my bilingual gap. So even though I'm in an English classroom, a large portion of my class is Spanish speaking, and that culture responsive piece is very forced. It's very kind of arbitrary. I think that would be a great way to like run that together just in my classroom, and then take that out to share it, the books on Edmodo, and possibly link to another classroom across the world or a tribe, and possibly start sharing through there. And then that had me thinking about just lesson plans. So if I just pulled the book off their webpage, my kids could cite evidence from the text, they could track to reference words, but then they have to do it in multiple languages. So if this is the third word in French, okay, how do I find this concept of where's the third word in English? Then I got to be on like social justice and awareness opportunities. And then I had teachable moments for students. So actually having a student teach a lesson in English and then share it with the counterpart. I want you to now teach this same lesson in your language. I want to share it to another student. And then I want them to ebook back or book create what did you learn, and make learning cycles with them during their independent practice block. For me, I need to make it more meaningful. And then last, it really just touched on like preserving cultural identities for me.
And I think you're right in hearing you talk about a lot of schools that have primarily Spanish speakers in terms of their multilingual learners. Even by having books in different cultures, it almost affirms and makes it okay to be a member of a culture that's still using, that is bilingual. So even if you're reading a book that's written in French or in English or anything else, then you go, oh, well, I'm part of that because I speak another language too.
And I thought the homeschool connection, because I do teach 3-year-olds, to have the parents help us write the book, and then it could also be translated in all the languages represented, because I don't have a lot of Spanish, although I have like 2 students, but I have a lot of other languages represented in my classroom. So that would be very helpful to, and I was just talking to her, just concept books like the body parts and, you know, getting them to start speaking more English, you know, manners, just all kinds. There's a lot of different things we can do.
And I think I didn't write it down, but just thinking while we were talking, one of the interesting things the school that I work at is 97% Latino. It's a high immigrant population. So often like our ELA-esque classrooms, they often only speak their native tongue. And so one of the things I was just thinking that was interesting is, as I look at my students, a lot of them don't necessarily know their own culture as well as their counterparts in ELS, and there's kind of this gap in between them, because they referred, like we had kids in our room this week on a contingency plan, and they were referred to as the Spanish kids. And I, after I corrected and got really upset with my kids for referring to them as that, I started thinking, and I was like, there's this cultural gap just in our own school. And we're classrooms right next to each other. And how this would be a way culturally that we could bridge that gap. And so maybe it is working with my ELS classroom, and they're creating a book about their culture together. One is doing it in English, and one is translating that in Spanish. And just how I was just thinking, I don't even necessarily to start need to go across the world. I can go to my classroom next door and find that and bridge those gaps. And then I just think of the impact that has on our school when it's not us and them anymore. It's us. It just becomes us as a school.
They're learning about each other, from each other, with each other, all at the same time.
And the same culture. I mean, and learning about their own culture.
About themselves.
That they often, and just talking with my students, don't know too much about.
Yeah. And the collaborative stuff is really so fun. Like they just, you can make them on your own, and that's great too. But there's endless opportunities for collaborative sharing of language and culture and all that just through that kind of focused activity together, purposeful activity. Yeah, oh, I'm so glad to hear all of your ideas. Thank you for sharing all of that. So what we have, what else do you want to add here?
Just that you can access our books by our website.
Yeah, let's look at the website for a second.
It's our website, WriteourWorld.org. It's in the process of changing, but our books will stay on there. So it's under Our Books, you see, and there's some instructions on how to download those as well. So we have, oh, I have to sign in, I guess.
I can second it.
Thank you.
We have instructions for folks that are using Windows instead of Mac products. If you have an iPad or some kind of Mac tablet, you can download just directly by clicking on the books, and they'll come onto your iPad. For Android and other Chromebooks and other things, we do have directions on our website under Our Books. That's the first thing you'll find on there is how to download them. So all of our books are available right now. Everything that you looked at today is available on our website that you can download immediately. It's like asking for the
Okay.
You can make it up.
Is this your website?
You just make it up.
Oh.
Refresh. Yeah, you have two open, so I don't think it'll let you.
Okay. That's okay, no worries. So yeah, so we'll give you guys.
That is not. It's
WriteourWorld.org.
Write Our World. Let me see. It should.
WriteourWorld.org.
Cards and stickers for everyone. This is all was from like our efforts at graphic design. We're actually going to get someone who knows what they're doing. So pick up the ball as soon as we can raise enough money for that. So start at Google.
Did you go? Like how we started directions?
No.
But it was still really fun. It's still a weekend.
Really? I didn't start at Google.
It is a big file, so it'll ask you if you want to download. But you'll have to say yes.
I pitched it. It's great.
I promise there's
Someone re-pitched my idea and lingered on quite a while.
Oh, wow.
They tweaked my 3-minute pitch or whatever while waiting in line, and but it is neat. So yeah, anyone can go to.
So here's our website. You just go to WriteourWorld.org and then down here to Our Books. And here's the directions. if you don't have a Mac.
So,
and then there's all of our books. You
what
just click
we
on
would
them
like
and
for you
download.
guys to do, if you would humor us, be so nice, is to put your thoughts down on a bit of a survey that so these are our revised email addresses, so those work a little bit better than the Writer World books. But we have, if you have a laptop, you can do this, it's like a focus group survey, so it's a way just for us to collect your thinking. This is a URL you can use if you want to do it online, and then we also have some printed copies. So they're right over here. Are there any other questions or thoughts?
Will you continually be putting books up on your website?
Yeah.
And if we create them, can we send them to you?
Yes, yes, you can. We have Dropbox and email, but you're welcome to just send the EPUB file to us. We will have some criteria kind of on our website in the future that shows what we're looking for in our books, but we are both administrators of the site, and so we would review and just make sure that everything's appropriate, obviously, to go online and stuff before it would become the WriteourWorld book, but yeah. Right now, it's our criteria is mostly just that it's bilingual, that it's culturally focused, and just appropriate, I guess.
And we're looking also, for those of you that were just in the Peace Jam one, we're looking at setting up some sort of a membership-based structure as well. So we're a nonprofit, and we're hoping to be able to access all kinds of great foundation money and so on that is for focused on literacy and technology integration and all that stuff. But we also want it to be sustainable, so we're really looking at, well, what kind of funding might be out there that would pay for this type of thing? If so, how much? Where does it come from? And all that. So those are some of the questions that we added there, just to get your thinking on if your school or you or your district or what have you, this would be an investment that they would be interested in making, or and that sort of thing.
Yeah, if you just say like formal.
But I mean, just thinking of that, even in this moment, linking it to like cultural responsiveness and all this, I'm like, you know what, like, I'm not even speaking their French or Arabic really, besides with me every now and again. I'm like, oh, I could do some.
Yeah. And it's not even just cultural responsiveness, it's also like biliteracy is actually, it helps you acquire English if you're stronger in your native. So then it's like moving you closer to that goal as well, you know, by using that native language.
What do you want for the educational setting?
Just like a school or an organization, or if they're, you know, are you working in an elementary school? Are you in?
Well, thank you again, everybody. It's about lunchtime, it looks like. Please stay in touch, and you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Twitter and Facebook. And then, you know, our website, feel free to download those books and use them with your kids and stuff, get a sense of what they are, and please give us any feedback you have, because we're really in the phase of trying to shape what this organization is going to look like, how are we going to bring it to kids, and hopefully making it a beautiful new website that actually looks like a lovely website. So.
Well, and your feedback is so important because we really want this to be something that you all can utilize.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So thank you so much.
So thanks again. Yeah, so are there any, should I collect this one and finish?
I really like your idea.